Help you with that up front, so therefore you won't get the line.
We are live.
Don't get in my face.
No,
Both sides.
no, we're gonna get a good shot of you. We're gonna get a good shot of you. It's gonna make you a superstar today.
Hey, how are you? As long as it's inside.
You ready to take these ones?
today to our what I believe will be our final structured outage improvement advisory team. Certainly appreciate everyone's engagement today. Buckle up. We'll try to go through everything as quickly as we can, but because it's really our last formal time together, we're going to try to step through things that we heard from not just this team, but others who have been participating as we've gone through this process. And we will also begin with at the end of the presentation, you will see a little bit of a matrix with some thoughts. They're not 100% fleshed. I will say that up front, so don't expect to see everything 100% finalized. But we will certainly be able to speak to some things that we're looking forward to putting into place that we think will make an impact and make an impact and a difference in terms of outage restorations and overall system reliability. Many of those things will augment things that we already have going on, but there will also be some things that we are currently not doing that we really think we need to focus on, again, largely from the input that we've received from this team, as well as some others. So glad to have you today, and hopefully everyone can stay well hydrated. It's nice and warm out there. So Doug McGowan is unable to be with us today, but Tiffany Collins from the city is here with us. And Tiffany, I don't know if you had any opening remarks, anything you wanted to share?
Good morning. I would echo JT's sentiments that we really appreciate everyone's involvement over the last couple of weeks. And this is a first round of steps that we're taking to increase services with MLGW. The city will continue to support them with every measure that we can, using all of our resources. And hopefully in the next couple of years, we will see improved services to the citizens. So again, thank you for your input.
All right, thanks, Tiffany. I'm going to turn over now to Brian Soulsby, who's been our facilitator. I want to thank you, Brian, for coming over for all of our meetings and facilitating for us. And certainly want you to know how much we appreciate your engagement. So, Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, well, thank you, and welcome everyone again. And as stated, this is our fourth session here, and I think it's been a very open and collaborative process. We appreciate that. We think that's one of the tenets of public power. And certainly MLGW, has taken the lead and the responsibility and acknowledged that there is always an opportunity for continuous improvement. They already were working on a plan to a 5-year plan that they had in place, and realized that after the ice storm that it was time to sit down again and take the opportunity to get that feedback from the community. And so not only was there feedback throughout from the group that's in here with us. I know most of you made the majority of the meetings, but also had it open up and had through the website, had opportunities for other people to email in comments, and we've been able to look at those. There have been some additional comments that come in, and so at this time we will take a quick look at those and kind of go through. So some of these I will skip because they're not necessarily directly related. Somebody was asking about a power outage. Does the utility have storm response contracts in place with contractors for supplemental line work and tree trimming?
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Those do exist, and I would say that there are times during extreme events that you may have to bring on even additional contracts, but certainly those are in place. Does MLGW have mutual aid agreements with other utilities and utility trade associations? I didn't see crews from other utilities listed in the outside resources.
Yes, we do.
And yes, and I can speak to that as the statewide association director. We also help coordinate that with those utilities from not only within the state of Tennessee, but also throughout the U.S., depending on the magnitude of the event. You continue to reach farther and farther out as needs are, to make sure the needs are met. Does the city and or MLGW have an existing team ready to respond to hacking or foreign attacks for our energy grid, referencing the Colonial Pipeline, that everyone must be prepared? Please advise.
Yeah, I can respond to that.
Yes, MLGW does have a plan all utilities that are connected to the bulk electric power system have a cybersecurity plan. And we exercise it regularly. It's kind of a continuous 24/7 effort. We drill, do an exercise every year, along with reminders throughout the organization on phishing attacks and hacking and all that sort of thing. We look at all our upgrades to our software, and we have to screen them and make sure that they are within the parameters that we set and maintain our security of our system. And there are all types of alerts that we get that are privy to the industry, not necessarily privy to the public.
All right, thank you, Alonzo. It seems that outages.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Do you,
Hold on, please.
Good morning, Scott McCormick. Are you able to tell if anybody has tried to hack us? And have we had inquiries from the bad guys?
Yeah, and I'm going to speak on behalf, and I don't think Lachelle was here. We have a chief information officer who's here, but I tell you, I know from my past, I spent about 8 years in that IT role. There are ways to detect blocked attacks, so you can track those, right? So it's my understanding that we do know that how many we've blocked before they even get into our system, past our firewall, and so that's part of the technology that we have embedded in our system, much like I'm sure the city has and other entities. Oh, absolutely. As we speak right now, there are people trying to get in today, right now. Absolutely. Yeah, that happens all the time.
Okay, the next one, it seems that outages happen with every weather event. Is there some way that the cause of these outages should be permanently fixed, better protected equipment, partial routes underground, require extensive tree trimming if necessary? And that is what the presentation will get into today, and certainly what we've talked about. There are definitely some options that are being looked at. However, there are some things that extreme weather events are going to get no matter what. You can't be 100% hardened to tornadoes, etc. I think the committee would benefit from the input of the actual MLGW linemen and outside workers who have to deal with the problems. And Alonzo, I'm sure you've spoken with operations staff throughout. Maybe they haven't been present here, but I know that's certainly part of the communications plan. Would you like to speak at all to kind of on the...
Yeah, we've had some conversations with staff. We'll continue to talk with them and try to integrate their input into solutions around this.
MLGW should prioritize frequent outage projects using the 310 list, March 10th list, I guess. Addressing these problematic areas should mitigate storm outages. Anything specific there? I would assume that's kind of what's incorporated into the... Yeah. Yeah, I want to try to answer these, but also be swift as Alonzo has a very detailed presentation for y'all today. You're in for a treat. You get to see the cake come out of the oven, maybe. Underground lines. This is too expensive, right? It's a moot point. Or could we all add $5 to our bill and roll it out neighborhood by neighborhood in a few years? And you see that mixed reaction, and I'm not surprised by that. And certainly that's, I think there's some strategic looks at some areas that Alonzo will be talking about. MLGW has been negligent in pursuing underground lines in Midtown and the East Bunton communities. The communities cannot survive, and I will move out of town if more attention is not given to solving the problem. I was without power for 10 days, which was a health hazard. MLGW needs to sue property owners who will not trim trees in their backyards. Aggressive action on trim trees need to be a major priority. Again, I think that may be a limited view of wanting MLGW to sue customers. Moving on, looking at the areas of the rear property lines, overhead with the poorest reliability for possible undergrounding or other improvements should maximize return on investment as opposed to a more wholesale approach. And I know that is part of what MLGW staff is evaluating. Suggestions for improvement. We'd like to see customer service be honest about outages rather than trying to appease callers by being nice and putting out incorrect information. With that, I think we all agree. I think they're doing their best to be honest, and sometimes you don't know. when you have a whole circuit out, you don't know how many additional faults are creating additional outages within that circuit until you get the circuit breaker back on. Then you see that, you know, it wasn't just a outage at the substation, but maybe an outage at multiple locations on that circuit. And so, you know, I think that they're, you know, doing their best to give you the right information how to appease the customers. And then I know that MLGW has talked a little bit about their app and some of those things for communicating as well. Conduct benchmarking with other utilities that have good reliability and storm response. Adopt best practices in MLGW. Some for considerations, City Utilities of Springfield, Missouri, and EPB of Chattanooga. And Alonzo, I think y'all have done some of that. Would you like to speak to that at all?
We're continuing to do that, and there are a lot of different utilities out there and different setups, but we'll continue to look at the utilities and see if there are things we can glean from them to improve our processes and our services.
Obviously, you've got a customer over here from Springfield, Missouri. And I was with their manager this week, so good guy, good system. Conduct an internal post-mortem after each storm to get ideas for improvements from the MLGW employees that work the storm, I think.
Yes, we do that at every storm.
Okay. All right, is this the bottom of our list? Well, good, we got through those. But yeah, so they're already doing that after every storm, and certainly, like I said, some of that was the genesis of getting this whole group together and getting a broader group beyond just the linemen and staff. And so I think with that, we're now down to the overview of elements of the 5-year enhancement and heat wave impacts on system reliability. And so with that, Alonzo, I will hand the conch to you.
All right, well, good morning. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about the current state of affairs and where we are on our 5-year improvement plan, but also kind of deal with the big issue that we have right now, which is that it's hot. And when it's hot, it affects your power service in many, many ways. So we're going to try to talk you through that in just a minute. It's coming up. There it is. Okay. So let's see. First of all, let's review the 5-year plan. As we said before, we're spending money in various areas to try to improve our system-wide, looking at our vulnerable areas throughout the electric system. So we're looking at asset life, so we're looking at substation equipment, power transformers, circuit breakers, and that sort of thing. We're looking at vegetation management, which is just a fancy word for tree trimming and vine removal. Underground cable, talked to you about that before. We're replacing underground cable. We're looking at possibly expanding our underground system as a result of this discussion. Grid modernization, we talked about that. That's the distribution automation system, which makes it possible for us to have a self-healing system, a system that when we have an outage, it can narrow it down to the smallest number of people. And then wood poles. We have overhead, we have a lot of poles, we have quite a few poles, and we have to monitor them, monitor their health, and replace them as needed. But let's talk a little bit about heat. So, what do you think causes most of our load in the summertime? Talk to me now. Air conditioning, right. So, air conditioning provides a tremendous amount of load throughout our system. TVA has provided electricity throughout the Tennessee Valley. They've been well over 30,000 megawatts these past few days because it's been hot. It's been 98 degrees here. It's been 100 degrees in Nashville. It's been hot in Chattanooga, Knoxville. So that's been a problem. Extreme temperatures have adverse effects on electrical components. For instance, substation transformers start to overheat. Because you're having so much power going through conductors, they start to overheat. And the funny thing happens when metal gets hot. It expands, and it contracts, and expands. And at some point, it begins to become looser and may actually burn. So we have all those situations that occur within the electric system throughout the valley. And not just at Memphis, but throughout the valley. Our engineering and operations team works jointly to monitor electric loads. We look at the various loads throughout our service territory. For instance, if we see voltages starting to drop in certain areas, then we may raise the regulator, may close in capacitors, we do those sort of things to maintain voltage stability throughout our system. So, if you think electric use is correlated to heat temperature, here's the perfect example. It's very closely correlated. You see in the yellow, those are the temperatures, and the red is our electric demand. As temperature goes up, naturally demand goes up. So TVA is responsible for balancing our load. In other words, making sure that we have the right amount of generation for the load that's on being used, and then making sure they have a certain margin. Because anything can happen in the system. We've seen that happen. Occasionally when you see a light flick, the lights don't go out, something's happened in the system. So we have to have enough margin to make sure that we can ride through any issues. Maybe a capacitor bank blows, or a switch fails, or something, or a breaker fails. We have to be able to ride through that. TVA does implement electric load curtailment plan. Today is probably the third or fourth day of electric load curtailment plan, where we'll be at step 10 earlier in the day, and we'll move to step 20. Step 10 is voluntary. No, step 10 is for internal issues. In other words, MLGW will drive into a dark parking lot, and it'll be warmer in our building because we're cutting back. And we're at step 10. When we go to step 20, we look for volunteer curtailment, and we advertise through the media. So when you see us advertise that we want you to set your thermostat at 78, we want you to lower your electric consumption, that's because we're trying to contribute and be helpful to the entire valley. It's not just the MLGW in its system and in its components, but it's making sure that we are able to balance our load to the generation resources that are available. Does that make sense? Okay. Then, as it gets worse, and it has happened before, but it's rare, we have some remaining actions. We have localized voltage reduction that takes place at step 30. All that to keep from turning people off. Step 40, we start talking to our industrial customers and telling them to reduce their load. Step 50, we interrupt general firm load. And that is when we start opening breakers. That's the rotating blackout thing. Okay? Then at step 60, that's when the voltage is dropped to the point that there's a potential that we can cascade out the whole system and we start shutting stuff off. So that's, fortunately, a situation we haven't been in. But we have to have a plan just in case. Because remember, all of this is interconnected and we're all contributing to the bulk electric system. And the bulk electric system is the largest machine in the United States. So, that kind of covers where we are right now. It's hot, and the demand is high, and the components are stressed. So are there questions regarding that part? Yes?
So, in the last couple of years,
This is on.
since COVID, and we've had an increased number of people working remote, so there are more people at home during the day.
Mm-hmm.
When historically we see the increase in the demand after people get home from work. So
Right.
now people are at home all day. And I was trying to recall in the last 2 years if we've had temperatures as high as we have now, and possibly for the next couple of days. So would that change how we communicate to people about the amount of power that they use? Does that impact the steps there in 10? Do we beef up communications to people because of that?
Yeah, I think that's something we definitely need to look at, and we need to look at it from system-wide. I continue, it still kind of follows the same general patterns. Around 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon is when we hit our peaks. But you probably have a little higher base load throughout the day, and that's what we have to look at. Any other questions? Yes.
Sorry, I apologize, I was wrong, but this is the TPA's contingent plan for us now. And do they notify, excuse me, so they notify MLGW that we need to take these steps based on what they're seeing in our area, or does MLGW know what's going on here? Does TVA know?
It comes from TVA. TVA is the balancing authority.
Okay.
And that's a kind of a fancy NERC term, North American Electric Reliability term. They're the balancing authority. So they're the ones that put out that information and have to have a load curtailment plan that all the people connected to TVA have to follow. So they monitor and they put it out, and then we put that information out through corporate communications.
So, but it's based on what TVA tells you to do at this time, not what MLGW sees that we need to do for citizens here.
Right. Okay, we're gonna roll along. Gonna get you out. Is there a game tonight? Okay, we're gonna get you out. We will know. We'll try to put up on the screen, maybe a picture in the picture. Okay. So, refresh your memory. Vegetation management was to reduce customer minutes interrupted. That's the number that we kind of talk about a lot. Customer minutes interrupted. So we're going to try to reduce that by 21.8 million. So that is tree trimming. And if you see, this is kind of a historical, but you can see if we get to our predicted 3-year cycle, then we can end up with a better outage response and fewer outages. So we have fewer outages caused by trees. So the green line shows where we would fall and where we have fallen when we've been able to get close to that cycle. So what are we doing in vegetation management as a result of these discussions? So we're adding additional contractor resources. We'll be looking at our outage data to kind of direct those resources more strategically to improve tree trimming around circuits and neighborhoods. We're actually looking at, there's some pretty cool software out there. So they take satellite imagery and they can look at trees in particular times of year. It can kind of help you identify diseased trees, identify trees that may be impacting your lines, and help give you some additional analytics in trying to determine where you put your tree trimming resources. So we're looking at that. And we want to talk more with municipalities to develop standards around trees, particularly trees that aren't in our right-of-way, but could be trees that could affect our electric system if they were to fall. So we're working with municipalities on that. We know there's an ordinance. It's challenging to get that ordinance and enforce it, particularly when people may not have funds to take care of those trees. So we've got to figure out the push-pull on that, but we're working to work with the various municipalities to address that issue. Infrastructure resiliency, I talked about the substation plan. As I said, many of our breakers and transformers are way past what we would normally have as a life cycle for them. We use some pretty sophisticated analytics on our transformers. We do dissolved gas analysis. When a transformer starts failing, it starts putting out various gases, and the blood of the transformer is that oil. And we can test it, and we look for carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, the ratios of those to determine when we should change them. These transformers are big. These are big substation transformers, and they are now have a 24-month lead time. Used to have a 12-month lead time to get them. So we have to kind of monitor them, but we don't want them going out unexpectedly. So we monitor them and we change them out beforehand. But with that 24-month lead time, that's pretty challenging. We're seeing in our industry the same challenges that a lot of other industries are seeing when it comes to the supply chain. Just these pictures are animal mitigation efforts. We've had squirrels, snakes, raccoons, coyote pups, birds. Am I missing anything? A possums, yeah. We've had it all getting to the substation, and we try to figure out ways to keep them from getting into the conductor. They're crafty little fellows. Then they can get out there and cause you real problems, and damage to the breakers and damage to the switches and that sort of thing. So the plan on the infrastructure is on schedule. So we'll continue with the schedule that we have. So that's working out pretty good. We've probably seen some pretty good results on that. We don't have as many false trips as we used to, so it seems like it's moving along pretty well. So it's helping a lot. The thing with substations is that they happen infrequently, but when they happen, it has a big impact. So that's why we focus on them. Yes?
You just mentioned that the substation breakers and transformers are past normal life expectancy. How do you say you're on schedule? How many years past are we on this?
Well, when I say that, some of them have been in 30, 40, 50 years.
Right.
They're not necessarily unreliable. We're still maintaining them. But we want to move to a more modern setup, and particularly around the transformers. We monitor all of those, and we're pulling them out of service as we see conditions warrant them.
Okay, and in this plan to fix this issue, is the schedule going to include a good timeline that you're going to project to us on?
Yes, I mean, we're still on schedule for a 5-year timeline on substations.
5 years, okay. And that was the 2019 plan, though. I want to understand we're already 2 years into this plan.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
All right. Pole management. Reduction goal here was 2 million minutes, and that's to get rid of the poles that we find that are starting to rot and they fall because of various issues. Wooden poles, this is the age of poles, can run all the way up to 65 years. So we try to look at how we can replace them strategically. We have a contract that does that looks at wood pole management. So it says the condition of poles, and we do it on a 10-year cycle. We prioritize and replace poles that are end of life, and we reinforce poles to extend their life. Some of them we just put in reinforcement at the base. And we treat poles with fumigants and pesticides. And it's a wood pole in the ground. What's going to happen? Bugs, termites, wood-boring insects are going to try to get into those poles. So we started our latest inspection and treatment cycle in February 2021. We have inspected over 39,000 poles. We've got a contract for pole replacement. I'm going to continue with that contract. We replaced 880 poles in 2021, which was ahead of plan, and we're at 363 poles in 2022, so we're running on track on that. We may accelerate it based to take advantage of available resources. We've got good contractors, and they're working real well at replacing those poles, and we may accelerate that, or we may put them on different projects that are related to reliability. Underground cable replacement, 4.3 million customer minutes interrupted. Remember what I said about underground. Underground cable is reliable, but when it fails, it's out for a long time. And in the heat, that's one of those things that happens. We've had a few underground cable issues, or locate and repairs is what we call them, and they go 8, 9, 10 hours, 11 hours to be replaced. Because you got to locate it, you got to dig it up, you got to pull it out, and you got to repair it. So, and then cover it up and then re-energize it. So we've got underground cable replacement. As you can see, we got basically 2 different types of underground cable in our system: PE cable, and then ethylene, propylene, rubber. Yes, EPR cable that's in our system. And the EPR cable is tremendously more reliable. We've had it now for quite a few years, and it's shown to be a very reliable cable. It still fails, but it doesn't fail as quickly or as often. The cable in the green is what we're trying to replace.
What causes cable to fail?
So what causes cable to fail is that you get what's called treeing in the insulator. So the treeing then occurs and will allow water intrude into the cable, and then it starts failing. That right, Don? That's close enough? Yeah. So, all right. Trend lines based on the dollars spent. You can see we can reduce our faults by spending more money. We'll try to massage that a little bit. We've got contractor crews that came available in 2021. So far, the number of URD, that's underground residential distribution faults per year, have declined by 30%. We still have a work backlog, so we're not quite on schedule with that. So we're trying to catch up with that, and we'll evaluate options. We may add additional crews, or because in this plan, you've got underground retrofit and you've got possible underground expansion, but we've got to look at that. System hardening, and that could be anything. That's anything from changing the way that the system is designed, putting part of it underground that has a tendency to fail, breaking up circuits, all that sort of thing. So that is a process that we're going through. So we've got pole replacement to help with restoration efficiency. We're working on an improved interface between our CARES and SCADA system. Our CARES system is our outage management system that deals with the distribution system. Our SCADA system is our supervisory control and data acquisition system that works with our substations. They have to talk to each other, and they give data back and forth to each other. So we've got to improve the synchronization around that. And we're looking at our restoration process. As I said earlier, after every major storm, we have a post-mortem, a sit down with the internal staff to see what we can do better. We have done that. We're running through that action item list as we speak. One of the areas we want to improve is damage assessment, getting faster damage assessment. We had a lot of things that were on the ground for a long period of time, and some of those situations were hazardous, and we need to address that a little bit better. Better two-way communication with contract crews. Presently, when our contract crews come in, they work all day, they turn in their work at the end of the day. So we really don't know what they've done until at the end of the day. So we're trying to improve the communication with them so we can get real-time information on how they do their work. And with that, it'll help us have an improvement around reported outages and restoration times. Yes?
Yeah. Okay. Just before as far as the communication link between SCADA and CARES,
yes,
that has been an issue for some time.
Right.
So what is your timeline on rectifying that? Because I've heard that over 6 years, over 8 years. So what is the timeline on addressing that issue? Because CARES and SCADA has been around over 15 years.
Yes, and we've had actually CARES system for a very, very long time, but that link has been somewhat of a challenge. So I don't really have a date for it, but it does need to happen quickly. I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah, it's like we keep talking about the same things.
And things have improved.
An issue. You know, I know that's a serious communicative link, so I'm like, what specifically are we saying will be done to address that?
We'll put that in the notes and get it out to you. Okay? Yes.
Thank you. So I have a similar question. So MLGW made the decision several years ago to invest in smart meters, which are not inexpensive pieces of equipment that are supposed to allow for improved and enhanced tracking and communication back to a centralized system.
Right.
And I realized that the first phase involved a relatively small portion of homes in our city. However, there has been phase 2 deployment underway. So for those of us who do have smart meters, how can we take better advantage of the technology that's accessible and available. And for those for whom it's an option, how can we expand that? In other communities where there's higher penetration of smart meters, there's better and more real-time data, so that resources can be more efficiently sort of directed to those areas where there are problems and challenges. And so it's similar, because I understand you're talking about some different systems here and the coordination of those, but how can we also capitalize on this next gen technology that offers a sound investment in this space?
Excellent question, and it goes hand in hand with the question in the back as far as getting better information, particularly from the field. So, Jim, you want to answer that? It's Jim West, Vice President of Customer Care.
Yep, good question, thank you. So we are about 98% smart meters on the system now. So we have essentially fully deployed. And those premises without smart meters are customers who elected to opt out and not have a smart meter installed on their premise. At previous meetings, we've talked about the scale of Winter Storm Landon and how that just sort of overwhelmed our ability to provide timely and accurate outage notification. However, smart meter technology provides a lot of other benefits. Most importantly for individuals, I would suggest you look into My Account. If you're not using My Account already, it's easy to sign up for that. And within My Account, there's a section called Explore Usage that lets you go in and drill down and see patterns of energy and water usage throughout the day. It's typically uploaded overnight, and you can look not only at monthly tracking, but really get very granular and look at what's going on a day-by-day basis. So that, for an individual who's interested in understanding energy and water usage for their own location, that's a really great tool that's enabled by smart meter technology.
Yeah, and to go along with the part of your question as far as getting that data back in, we're going to cover a little bit of that later on in the presentation, and hopefully we'll get that addressed. Sure.
I'd like to ask a follow-up question. Thank you. I didn't realize that the penetration here in our community was so high. That's great news. I hope that we can continue to explore ways to take advantage of all of those different data. And I hear you about how it overwhelmed the system. This seems like a real ideal opportunity to engage with data scientists, those who manage big data, to understand the mechanisms that created the convolution in the real-time data acquisition from those, so that we can take advantage of those, because that could seem to help a lot with some of the, we've heard customers had erroneous information, their power's back on, in fact, we heard that's a real complaint, right? Then people call long lines, you have mad people, all of those things. Real time, using My Account, taking advantage of other resources that are available to us, seems like a real opportunity for data scientists to really partner and work on this issue.
I like the idea of engaging data scientists, and we'll look at that. I'll let Jim talk about some of the changes that we've made since Landon on as far as the data that's coming in and how we've improved it. It's still not where we want it yet, and then we'll get to your question.
So we are, doing a deep dive into our after-action review after the winter storm to understand, how we can improve the timeliness and accuracy of outage notifications. We do fairly recently within MLGW have an analytics department. And so we are really just beginning to explore our own capability there. We have partnered with TVA, who has a big data analytics pilot going on. So we're just now really exploring how to leverage all that data we have. We're just about 1 year past reaching that 98% penetration in the marketplace. So it took us several years to get that foundation in place. And now that it's there, we can explore all the ways to use that. Customer notification, big data analytics, all the things that data now allows us to leverage.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, yes, good morning. I just be back, I don't think this is working. Okay. On her question. I brought up a very similar question to that in a meeting that I believe was back in April, so a couple months ago. And someone explained from MLGW that the way the smart meters work is that they relay information to a black box that's on top, an electrical black box that's on top of the street poles. So if the electricity goes down, the smart meters cannot relay the information.
Right, and they have to hop.
Yes, so since I brought that question up, and since that was, y'all said you were working on it, it's been 2 months, could you update us on any updates you've made to that? Because I think that also ties back into the communication issues with CARES and SCADA.
So if I don't answer your question at the end, we'll talk later. So I mentioned something about changing the way our system's designed. There are parts of our system where we have long tabs. You see up on the left, you see everything in red, everything there is connected. If a tree falls anywhere on that system, everybody on that group is out. There's one fuse, one protection device for that area. What we're looking to do in many areas is kind of break that up. So this is where we've added, let me see, I'm going to use this, whoops, that wasn't the pointer. This is the pointer. So right here is where we've done strategic undergrounding. Here's where we've broken up the circuits and kind of changed the way it's protected so that fewer customers are impacted by an outage, and then this area doesn't have the same sort of exposure from a tree and that sort of thing. So we're looking at various areas and how we go about storm hardening and improving the various areas that have a lot of outage problems. So let's talk about the neighborhood initiative. So neighborhood initiative, if you look here, these are the average hours off per year. Now, by far, the worst is up in Shelby Forest. Fewer customers up there, but it's a tough area. But when you look within the city, the areas that are most impacted are Castelia Heights, Orange Mound, Parkway Village, Whitehaven, Westwood. We're going to get to that. You've been asking this question continuously for 4 meetings, and I'm going to answer it today. Then you look at the system average interruption frequency. Once again, you see, this is in Orange Mound, this is the Castelia Glenview area. And once again, I'm going to get to you, answer your question. So, this is Orange Mound, Sherwood Forest, Cherokee, Bethel Grove, Imogene Heights, Fair Lawn, and the University of Memphis area. So this area right here is kind of the area of focus. And this is the area of greatest concern. This is the area where we have the worst outages. This is the area where we have the longest outages. In Landon, it was probably 140 something minutes compared to 132 minutes in other parts of the 140 hours as opposed to 130 hours at other parts of our system. So that's where we're going to focus. Now that particular area is served by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 substations. You can see we're already investing in those substations. We already have about $22 million in investment in those substations to include the substation work. Circuit areas, we've got a lot of different circuit areas. It's pretty granular right here. We're not going to say that, but you can see where these are circuits from substations. That's out of 25. That's out of 42. That's out of 1. That's out of 1, and that's out of 5. As you can see, the different substation areas that serve this area. So these are areas where we replace poles in Orange Mound and Sherwood. See, we haven't gotten a lot of them replaced, but I'm sure it's based on what we identified. The green is non-rear, but the red is rear property line. So what we want to do is create a neighborhood initiative to address overhead distribution that is aged and is not built to our current standards. We have a lot of old construction out there. And we found the various weaknesses around old construction. Conduct an in-depth survey of area infrastructure and line configurations and make changes within that. It's kind of a customized solution for each area. We're going to dedicate crews and engineering resources to target get the work done. We're going to break up long feeds like I talked about earlier. Install additional transformers for more reliability and better voltage regulation. Upgrade lightning protection devices. Add more of them so that if a line gets hit by lightning, it will bleed it off into ground and not damage other parts of the circuit. Replace cable types that are failure prone. And we may look at what's called spacer cable, tree cable. It's a kind of cable that's more resilient to tree contacts and doesn't go out as often. Add animal protection where needed. Some of the upgrades include eliminating DJ frame transformers. I'll show you an example of that in a minute. Reduce customers per transformer, reduce customers per fuse, replace substandard service wires. We have a lot of open wire service in that area, and that's more susceptible to tree contact. And inspect jumpers and connections and use trip savers, which can help with save a truck roll. It's an automated fuse disconnect device that looks at the taps. We talked about taps earlier. This is a pop quiz. And we'll be using those. So this is an example of DJ construction. You got a transformer here. You got the secondary above the transformer, but just below the primary. And it's an obsolete construction. It's a bit more hazardous to work on. It is more prone to outages from trees and animals. It has this open wire, that's an open wire secondary that's running from pole to pole. And it's not as safe as other current standards. This is a trip saver. This is the automatic fuse device. We will reduce the truck rolls and reduce customer minutes interrupted by minimizing the number of customers that are out, improve system reliability, and should improve customer satisfaction. Infrastructure and technology. So that's the neighborhood initiative. Where are we starting, Aretha? Excuse me, Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
All right. Infrastructure technology, grid modernization, reduction goal, customer minutes interrupted, $43.4 million. Minutes, excuse me, $43.4 million. It's actually $130 million. But that involves the smart meters. We talked about those earlier. Want to use more remote outage reporting, but we want to get a more reliable communication channel from those smart meters back to our device, our system software. The current network is on a 900 megahertz Tropos network. It's not very resilient in big outages, so we want to make some improvements in there. It may benefit because we're going to have to put a communication network in for our distribution automation system. So when we put the distribution automation communication network in, we can start piling the smart meters onto that network and probably get better communications back to our devices. Distribution automation streamlines the restoration. These are all types of automatic switches. They're out in the field now. We're going to continue to put those out. The beauty of those, once they're really fully implemented, is that you can have all of these kind of work together automatically. You can get a self-healing systems to some extent. It looks at load shifting. If you start seeing overloads, we can transfer to other circuits, and voltage regulation and power factor correction. As I said, this is $130 million. This is 1,200 automated switches. We put them on the worst performing circuits. We have some already out there. Switches will automatically interrupt faults, so they'll set fault current to facilitate switching plan. When we have a fault, we have to have a troubleshooter go out and do a switching plan to try to get things restored. If we can automate that or remote that, then we can get customers back on quicker. So what's the project status? We've completed detailed selection and specification of switches. We have developed an estimated cost for phase 1. We have created a process for purchasing and handling of the equipment. It's a lot of equipment. 1,200 switches is a lot of equipment. We've developed a methodology for prioritizing circuits. We've developed methods for choosing sites for switches based upon historical reliability data, and we've developed criteria and methods, including communications. We've commenced deployment. We already have some switches out. We determined how to test and commission them. This is family business, but it involves a lot of areas in determining how you put that in place and commissioning them, because you've got your communications area, you've got, I can see I've already talked too long, got one person leaving. but we can find, when we put them out there in the field, there has to be the coordination that occurs with reliability and our relays and all that sort of thing. They have to be in the right spot as far as our reliability organization, and they have to communicate back, which is our communications organization. So we have to have some coordination with that, and of course, electric overhead has to put that in. So it's a lot. It's a lot. We were working with Burns McDonnell as a consultant. They've got a lot of expertise in this. They've made resource recommendations, command and control for full automation, and they're assisting with the change management. Because when you put all this in, it changes the way you look at your system, changes the way you operate the system. It affects personnel, it affects staffing, it affects decision making, so we're looking at that. And we're looking at grid simulations. We'll put those in the lab to see what happens if power goes out in this segment, and how does the system operate? We have to simulate that, so we have to have a digital twin of our system in order to do that. Phase 2, the wireless communications, which gets into getting that data back. Your distribution automation system will give you a lot of data back, and if it's possible, we'll bring back the meter data as well. We look for this system to be a little bit more resilient than what's used for meters, so we can get more data back into our system and make diagnostics as to what we should do in restoring the power. We plan to start the deployment on this phase 2 next year. And we wanted, as I said, wanted to incorporate communications for smart meters. And we want to be able to handle Ms. Brandt big data. She's gone. I wanted to say that before she left. Phase 3. Phase 3 is $10 to $15 million. This gets into some really technical stuff. So it gets into syncing the data around SCADA pairs and OMS. It also looks at fault location, isolation, restoration, volt VAR optimization, which is a fancy engineering term for just balancing the load, making sure that's right, making sure your volts are right. Load allocation, switch order management, how we switch, the progression that we switch in our system. And the other part that we're looking at is separating our transmission and distribution operations. Right now, our SCADA operators are transmission and distribution operators. So we're looking at separating those responsibilities so we can make sure we get qualified, approved operators on the transmission system and get really knowledgeable distribution operators in the distribution system. A lot of those people will come from the field, so try to improve that staff in there. We have an RFP at the end of 2022 to address these issues. Okay? Round in the home stretch here. Also part of distribution automation and grid modernization. We want to upgrade our substation relays. It's about $15 to $20 million. There's going to be an RFP around that. Relays are pretty amazing. It's the first thing I learned when I came working in MLGW is how they work. They were electromechanical relays, had a little disc in them. When the load picked up, the disc made contact with another contact and caused a breaker to trip. All that's digitized now. All of that's digitized now. So you have now digital relays, and because you have certain information on your system, that relay can tell you how far the damage may be from the substation. Yeah, so they implemented that on the transmission systems first, and it's called zone relaying. We're adding more zone relays now on our distribution system to do that very thing. Kind of gives an idea. Is the A phase fault that's within zone 1. We know where to start looking. So that's what we're looking at now for our distribution system. Communications, capacities, and regulators, and deploy sensors for granular operation. You may have seen on our lines, we've got various, you may see a little device hanging from a wire. It's not a sneaker, but it's hanging from a wire, and that's a fault locator. And having that fault locator can give us additional information. We can put various sensors out there and get load information, we can get outage information that we can use in our analysis. And we want to continue to exploit our advanced data and meter system, an automated meter system and our advanced DA system to try to get more data to help with analytics around our load, around outage restoration, and that sort of thing. So about the numbers, we have 322 switches out there, completed design for 242. We selected locations, I said, for 322. 327 remotely controlled devices are currently in service. We have 190 that have been installed since the commencement of the 5-year plan. We actually started doing this before the 5-year plan. We spent $13.8 million so far, and we're getting deliverables from our consultants. We're getting good information from Burns & McDonnell. Communications. And how are we doing? It's 10 o'clock. You've been here an hour. And we're going to break after communications. He's not looking at the dog, he's looking at me. And he's my boss. So, communications. So we want to improve our penetration into the market on communications and how we directly communicate with customers. Our core communications does a great job of various types of proactive communications that are out there. We put a lot of that on YouTube. We put a lot of it out there to the customers on using social media. It gets out. But what we really like to do is give you an alert that it's out there. You know, send it to your mobile device and say, hey, we got a storm coming. It might impact you. And it could be long impacts. You need to get prepared. So we want to get that out, more detailed information to the individual, and not just depend on them to have to look at some social media page, or if it's slow enough news day they want to cover it, or if the weather's bad enough, we don't want to wait to that. So we're looking at increasing and encourage our customers to sign up for text alerts. We want to give them good information, so we're going to continue to refine our outage restoration alerts, to refine that whole process. A lot of that, corporate communication gets it out, but we tell them what to put out. So we got to make sure we give them good information. Yeah, so we want people to sign up for my account and get the mobile app so you can stay on top of power outages. So we'll be trying to increase that. It's really a good tool. We've been using it throughout the storms of this past season, not Landon excluded. It works. My power went out. My wife got a text that our power was out. My wife got a text that the power should be restored, and it was. In a small scale outage event, it works perfectly. So we've got to continue to refine that and try to scale it up so we can deal with larger events. So as I said, they work with print, television, and radio outlets. We put it out there, there's even more we can do there. We host daily press conferences. I did a lot of daily press conferences, along with Mr. Young and others, to talk about our restoration process. When we activate our crisis team. We activate our corporate communications team. When we were all together, we were all right there in that room. They were sitting right across the table from me. But they're there 24 hours. They're always monitoring traditional media as well as social media, looking at Twitter and trying to see, getting additional information from customers and trying to respond to it.
Connect with MLGW. Go to MLGW.com for bill payment, analysis, service transfers, outage updates, and more. Connect to us on Facebook to share comments and ask questions. On Twitter, you can give us a tweet. Connect to our blog for news and updates.
What appreciated on YouTube.
Connect by downloading iPhone apps. Get text message reminders. Stay connected with MLGW. We can help.
This is just an example of what we put out there to customers to try to encourage them to get connected with us, get information from us. It's out there. We just got to figure out how to get more penetration. They've done a good job with it. But we wanted to have more promotions around that. We want to increase an email opt-in process particularly around bill alerts. We're right now around 150,000. And Gail, you raise your hand if I mess up something, all right? We want heavy promotion of text alerts to increase enrollment. Currently, that's 89,000. Now, we've got 440,000 electric customers. And we want to get more of those customers into it. But we do need to give them good information, so we're working on that. We're going to use various techniques to get that done. You saw just one example here with this ad, which include digital and traditional media, phone messages, bill inserts, email, web, social media, to try to get people to sign up for my account and getting alerts. And those alerts are not just alerts about outages. It could be alerts about paying your bill. It could be alerts, and as I said earlier, alerts about impending storms and what it might do to you. So we want that to happen. We're looking at some analytics. Yes, Gail.
In order for customers to get the text alerts and the emails, we must have their approval. So we have campaigns in the past to increase that. We will now start another campaign to increase asking customers to opt in, because we just can't just send text alerts and emails without their approval. So that's why the numbers are where they are. We just need to get more customers. Well, first we got to give them confidence that we're not going to be sending them a lot of emails or text messages that's not related to their bill or outages. So that's we'll be working on getting those numbers up.
Yeah. So if you're getting a text now from somebody you didn't improve, it sends you a text, that's a problem. But we're trying to make sure we do it right and get your approval to do it. Yes.
What consideration or alternatives have you all looked at for the elderly? Because a lot of them, of course, are not equipped or may not have smartphones. So have we thought about a communicative option for them?
That's a great question. I'll let's talk to you more about it. One option would be about calling, but that is it's an individual. But we get a lot of, I get a lot of random phone calls all day. I very rarely would pick up my landline because I get so many calls that I don't want to talk to them about. I do not want to give contributors to this. I do not want to, yes, I have a landline, so I know how people with landlines.
And a lot of our older customers do listen to radio. So we do try to get a lot out of radio, but if they have an outage, that won't work. But if they do get hard copy bills, we have information in our bills, but that's not going to be something timely like tied to an outage.
Yeah, we'll try to do as much from traditional means of communication for people who are elderly, but I'm open to suggestions on other ways we can communicate with those who do not necessarily have a smartphone. Where I was going, predictive software. There's predictive software out there that can take a storm that's coming towards you and look at the wind speeds, and based on your historical performances, it's that big data thing, Ms. Brandt. And can give you what your predicted outages may be. Now, a lot, yeah. I don't know how much this stuff costs, but I got it. I saw it. IBM has some stuff, and a few others do. So, gives you that kind of information, and we can push that information out to our customers and give them some advance notice. Okay, look, you got 70-mile-an-hour winds coming in. It's going to affect 40% of our system. It could be out for possibly X number of days. You need to prepare. So if we get that kind of analytics, we may be able to do a lot in our communications with our customers. There are some analytics that help with that individual outage. We're not quite there yet. Here, the challenge with that gets back to what I talked about with our contractor crews. When we get the data back in, we get the data back in on restoration at the end of the day. It may have been on for all day, but we don't get that information until later on. Then we don't really have a good restoration time to feed these big data devices and the software that gives us the kind of response and analytics that tells us, hey, we're gonna get to you Wednesday. Everybody like us to tell them, we're gonna get to you Wednesday, Thursday. Everybody wants you to be tomorrow, but sometimes it's Wednesday. So we gotta be able to get better information out there. And I wanna get more of that. Yes?
My question pertains to communication with MLGW, and I will be very honest, I have been extremely discouraged over the last couple of months with the communication. You go to the MLGW webpage, this meeting was not posted until the 14th. It was actually, then before that it was posted on news release. It's not on a calendar that you can see. If you look where it says to go to the video, it is not a hyperlink that you can connect to. I have complained about that at a previous meeting, and someone said, oh, they're hyperlinked, and I had to literally show the individual from MLGW, pull up it on my computer, that it is not a hyperlink. You have to scan it, copy it, remember, type it in the search engine. So I do think that we need to be better at communicating. We need a public calendar that displays when there are open and public meetings that the public can attend. Like this meeting, you had it in there, but it didn't say it was open to the public. But because past meetings were, I assumed that this one was, and I was going to come anyway. So I just think we need to do better communication because it's very difficult to follow the information on the MLGW webpage. As soon as you pull it up, I know it may be on Facebook and everything else, but you need one central source of information, and that should be MLGW.
Thank you for that. We'll take that to heart. Yes. She's going to bring you a mic in a second.
Yes, thank you. I have one question, and it was brought up from my community. Some of the members want to know about reimbursement for food. Once the outages, if the outage is out long enough, or the refrigeration or the frozen food, I mean, is there any kind of reimbursement or anything for that?
So MLGW does not do that. Now, for certain customers that you want to speak to that as far as health and human services. Reimbursement for food.
Reimbursement for food, or like a refrigeration or frozen food or something if the lights are out past a week or whatever.
We do get requests on that, and generally people when complain about contact our legal department, and they handle those requests. But the Department of Human Services, they send us, after customers are out a certain period of time, they will send us a request asking for the names and addresses of customers who were out X number of days or hours. But those people that they're asking for generally are clients of the Department of Human Services. So they want to verify that those customers were out and lost food. And so we provide them with that data.
So we do not say, we say Department of Human Services, we say our food stamp. So if you're not on the food stamp list, you have to apply.
I don't know how the Department of Human Services determines who will get replacement food. All I know that we have to send to them a list of customers. Are they?
Yes, Beverly Perkins is back in the back, and she may be able to give some additional insight on
To get reimbursement from the Department of Human Services, you have to already be an existing Department of Human Service client, meaning that you are already enrolled to receive SNAP, food stamp, EBT benefits. And typically, they request that you've been out 12 hours or more, and they've had to determine that they're doing replacement. They don't do replacements after every outage. Typically just those that are widespread or community-wide.
It's not a question. I just wanted to comment on that because there are so many nonprofit organizations here in the city that people can reach out to, and when they have these problems. So that needs to, people understand that. They can reach out to even the NAACP. We might be able to refer you to somebody that has food for people that have lost food during this time. So I don't think it's MLGNW's responsibility to replace the food. That's why we have food pantries. We've got all of these other organizations here in the city that can help, with this. Even the food bank and MIFA, all of these organizations. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So, we're going. Yes, Ms. Mack.
Yes, I was going to say the Mid-South Food Bank has pretty much a hub. I'm representing MIFA, but we partner with the food bank. And there are pantries in every community, from the suburbs and to the inner city. And also, I've said this before, if there's an alert that needs to go to homebound seniors, we have volunteers that go out Monday through Wednesday on a regular basis. On Thursday, Friday, we have a full phone buddy program that we can get information out to homebound seniors on a regular basis.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
MIFA.
So is there?
Yes, it's better.
Is there any way that we could somehow, next is a big power outage that's people would know to go somewhere on the MLGW page, maybe provide itself as the source for a list of all of these food banks, employed, CP, et cetera, so they would know how to apply to get their food back?
That's a great point, and I think we're about to take a quick break, but let me just kind of summarize on that. Great point in terms of communications, and I think that's really important. We've heard you a number of comments and suggestions around ways that we can make sure not just communicating about outages, but about resources. And so that's going to be really important, and that's why Gail and her team, this is really her team running all of this. So they're hearing firsthand these thoughts, and so I think that's great. I do want to mention one quick thing before we break. We're going to come back and really talk about the sort of have a matrix of solutions of incremental things that we're planning to do. But before we do that, I want to reflect back on the comments about the elderly. It's sensitive to me. My mother's 97, and I have of course, and I'm getting there, so I guess I'm there. But one of the things I would suggest that and this is something we're needing to think about internally. One of the things I've noticed going through the experiences with my mother, my sister lives with her, but elderly people, and not just elderly people, but since we were talking about elderly, they need an advocate. Right, in general, there are a lot of times that they don't have an advocate. So whether it's about their bill or, they had an outage or communication. And so really one of the things that I'm sort of suggesting on the fly here to our team is to think about how that might apply for us in terms of an elder advocate type situation where someone could be designated that they approve, that we can confirm, that would help facilitate in times like this like these when maybe they're kind of maybe out of the loop. And I think that's really important so that we can make sure that they're not left out, because if, whether it's in their healthcare situation or getting an automobile fixed or something, they need an advocate. And so I appreciate you bringing that up, because we need to make sure we think about that. And we might need to cooperate, of course, with agencies, but we need to make sure that we think about that and don't leave that out. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So we're going to take about 10 minutes real quick, and then we're going to come back and go through the matrix around the tentative improvements and solutions that we're proposing. Thanks. Elderly and disabled, sure, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
When we have our major storms like Landon, we work with social service agencies all over the community and had all of that information available, all resources that were available, the food pantries, funding, and all kinds of information on our website. So during major storms, we have done that. We will continue to do that. And we have food pantries several times. Probably, how many do we have every year? We have them almost every other month.
During Hurricane Landon, the storm was actually on a Thursday. We had our first one the following Tuesday, and then we did another one
Yeah.
the following Friday.
And we had all kinds of social service information on our website. Excuse me? Excuse me? But we had a link to the social service agencies on our main page. It was a link that took you to all the social service agencies that were available, that would, customers would need information regarding outages, any food pantries, funding that was available. We had it up there for a while. Well, how often do you go to our page? Well, we didn't keep that up. Well, remember, that was back in February. We didn't keep it. Well, we kept the information up at that time during the storm. The link was on the main page that you could click on. Okay.
signals now are operate on our streetlight system. Our streetlight system has a tendency to be the last thing that we restore. We're trying to figure out a better way for them to be more resilient in the case of an outage, and we're working with the city on trying to identify those strategic areas that can have more resilient power. Some of them may have some type of backup system or within their traffic signals. So those are the big items. One of the things we didn't talk about has to do with damage assessment. We want to make sure that we're able to get the damage assessment done quicker, earlier, and make sure that we get that information. We may actually employ some other technology. We may actually, and we're going to probably pilot this, drones to use. We use drones on transmission. Yeah, but we're looking at drones as far as use in neighborhood areas and trying to see where damage is. Now, the challenge with that, I don't want something buzzing around my window, right? You. So, but we have to kind of manage that and kind of figure out ways we want to inform customers about that and get that information. So that's one area that we're looking at as far as technology is concerned. So, do you want to cover this part? Good, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alonzo. One of the things that, there are a number of items on there, and I know that you saw that still TBD in terms of cost, and maybe in some cases impact. So what we will be doing now post these sessions is making sure that we're able to effectively, our goal has always been to make sure that whatever is incremental to our budget, existing budget, those things can be baked into that cake over the next 2 to 3 months. Our budget typically, we're on a calendar year budget, and we typically present our budget to a board in the September-October timeframe, and it then needs to be approved by the City Council by the end of December. So from a logistical standpoint, those items that are incremental to our existing budget, we want to make sure that we get those incorporated. And so the next 2 to 3 months is when we're going to be massaging those items as well. And at the same time, we're going to be working with municipalities around those kinds of policy issues that need to be implemented. You may know from that second page of the matrix, you'll see where some of those will be seeking to roll those out first quarter, second quarter 23. Because we know that's going to take some time and likely may need to be approved by varying bodies as it may. So we'll be working through those over the next few months. I want to say first of all, of course, thank you all for your input, and this has been a great process. And I just want to cover. I'm going to come back up here after Brian wraps up and really close up. But again, the next several weeks we'll be finalizing these cost estimates. I talked about the third bullet. Moving as quickly as we can. We're trying to make sure that we don't drag our feet. We know it's important, but we got to fix this airplane while it's flying. So we have to make sure that we can do both and not either or. And so we've got to make sure we want to make sure that we do it right. There are some situations that are existing today that didn't exist a year ago or 2 years ago. Primarily, there are some supply chain challenges, and to the extent that these initiatives that we're talking about will require additional physical things, then we're having to deal with we're at the whims of the marketplace in terms of getting some of the basic things that we need. You heard Alonzo talk about some of the distribution automation infrastructure, but some of the basic things that we depend on every day, like transformers, are in short supply right now. Those are things that we take for granted. So I just say that to tell you in terms of our anticipated time frame, those time frames, many of them will be heavily dependent on the ability to acquire those types of, whatever type of infrastructure is there. So we need to be aware of that, those types of challenges. There are other challenges as well, but that's certainly one of them. This is a sensitive point, but I need to bring it up, and I want this team to understand, and I've said it, I think once, but I want to say it again. The things that we're talking about, in particular the things that are infrastructure related, will cost money. And what we all have to understand, and we'll do the best we can, there's infrastructure investment grants that's coming out from a federal perspective, and we're certainly doing our best to acquire what we can of those dollars that may be available from a grant perspective. But the things that we're talking about that are truly meaningful, most of those things will actually cost money. We're going to work within our existing budget to the extent we can, but what we won't do is hold off on making rolling out initiatives and improvements simply because we don't know where the money is going to come from. We're going to have to recognize, and our customers are going to have to understand that in order to make the improvements for our system, just like in your home or just like with your car, you've got to make investments. The longer you don't invest in your infrastructure, the worse off everybody is, and in particular those people that we're concerned about who can least afford outages. The longer we don't make the improvements we need to make, the worse it is for those folks who have the struggles that someone just talked about earlier about food spoilage and all that, right? So at the end of the day, it's a delicate balance, and our chairman of our board, Commissioner Mitch Graves, is on this team, and he keeps us mindful of this all the time. We don't want to make, we don't want to just make haphazard decisions, and we won't. We're going to be disciplined about that, but I don't want anyone to think that can make these types of improvements that we're talking about without investments. So everybody needs to just understand that, and part of what we need to be communicating is the fact that we may see down the road cost increases as a result of this. I cannot promise that we can do all these great things and make the system better and not have any cost implications. I just can't do that. I wish I could. We're going to do the best we can to mitigate that and maybe hopefully keep it as minimal as possible. But I want everybody to understand that that's a very strong possibility that at some point, in order to realize these benefits, there's going to have to be some significant investment, and it could create some cost challenges. Obviously, we're going to be partnering, as I said, with municipalities, making sure that we're coordinating effectively on policy-related things. When you heard Alonzo talk about the tree ordinances and things that we may need to do that, frankly, coming together with this team, I learned a lot about those things, so that was important. You heard him talk about starting in Orange Mound. We have, and Don Roberts is here, and he and his team really deserve a lot of credit for looking across our system and trying to find out how we can make improvements from a reliability standpoint. Don leads a team that looks at our power quality and our reliability, and they're helping us to figure out, across our system, really where do we have the most significant issues, where can we get the most bang for the buck, most effectively roll out our improvements. And so we're going to try to make sure we do that. And again, the information from today, the information from all of our presentations, of course, will be available on our website. There have been a couple small changes even in what you have printed, so the one that will be uploaded to the website will be the most current version. So all of that to say that we got a lot to do, and I don't think it's going to get done in the next few weeks, all of it, but this has been a very helpful process, and I believe that with input from you and input from some of those folks who aren't on this team, who have been sharing with us their thoughts, I think we're going to make things better. And that's our objective, and I don't promise that it will be perfect, and I certainly promise that there will be no more outages to get all these things implemented. We're going to have outages. You got to remember that, right? We're going to have outages. The goal of this, though, is to see improvements in our restoration time and our damage assessment and all of those things that we saw that were challenges that we experienced. But honestly, this has been a great experience. I'm going to turn this over. I think now Brian is going to kind of wrap us up. We'll finalize everything. Tiffany, if you want to jump in here, feel free. Okay.
Yeah, so thank you. I think we've all seen and learned a lot, and investing in technology is a good thing. I think by engaging a consultant, if you take the greatest technology and you put it out there and you put it in the wrong place, it's not going to give you the same benefit as if it's designed. Having that slow multi-year rollout on some of your distribution automation allows you to see how that's working effectively. If you put something out there that's not providing you any value, it's kind of like when you go buy a car, and what's the first thing a salesman wants you to do? Oh, well, look at this one here. It has all these other additional features, but if you don't use the features, then it was money wasted. So I think MLGW is doing a fine job. And supply chain is a major issue, and does that lead to delays? And maybe a 5-year has to be a 6 years. I'm not trying to buy time for them, but just last week, President Biden invoked the Defense Production Act for the utility industry because the supply issues are a major concern in the utility sector, especially knowing that we're heading into hurricane season and those kind of things, which certainly don't impact Memphis as much as the Gulf states, but it definitely can. So there's a lot at play here. I think you can see that to take a utility like MLGW, which is one of the 10 largest public utilities in the nation, there's a lot of work that they're sitting here and they're planning and investing on in order to make the system better for you, tomorrow, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So certainly I think they should be commended for that, and the fact that they did want to make this a very open and public process to get as much input as possible. So I know we've had several people ask questions along the way. We want to make sure that everyone has that opportunity to leave here knowing that the question you had on your mind you were able to ask. And so we'll take a few minutes here for a couple of additional questions if there are any at this time. I see a lady in the back and a gentleman over here to my left. We're going to start back here first, sir.
Thank you. I wanted to address two charts that are in here that are of the neighborhoods that MLGW services. You've got 20...
Ma'am, can you reference the page at the bottom so we can all follow along?
Well, yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
See the pages all right now. 77.
Okay, page 77,
would
thank
be the
you.
first one. That is neighborhood average out duration for the 2/3/22 ice storm. And then there's another chart. I haven't gotten to my point yet. I was going to try and help you. The second chart is page 67. Going back to the ice storm chart, I live in neighborhood 18, which is East Memphis. I've had probably 4 or 5 power outages since the storm. Sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 10 minutes, but it's enough that it has my attention, which is why I'm here. But anyway, I'm in the top 3 in the number of outages and the duration for the 29 neighborhoods. And it appears to me that you've got a lot of very good plans on the horizon. But if you look at the second chart, which is page 67, those neighborhoods start 2005 and go through 2018 before COVID hit and supply chain interruptions started. This is really discouraging to me. I now know for the first time I live in an area of town that either has the longest averages or the most averages. And my question to you is, with the plans that you have today, knowing that this chart goes back to 2005, when are you going to start addressing East Memphis? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Is there?
Yeah. So, we're gonna rank the various problems that happen in the neighborhoods and take it by a worst over a 10-year period. And your neighborhood will probably be one of those that's in that group. But that's where we'll start. Orange Mountain historically has had some of the worst, and I know that if you're in
Shelby Forest and Orange Mountain and Whitehaven and East Memphis are the worst outage areas. My question to you is not what you're going to start doing. What are you doing to address these areas?
So we do have a reliability area. If you're having multiple outages, and this is anywhere, you don't have to wait for
That's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you what's happening in neighborhood 18. I had an outage about 4 days ago. I had to go to bed because it was 10 o'clock, so I just went to bed. I'm really tired of this, and I represent a group of other people in front of this meeting. So it's not just me, there are other concerned citizens that don't understand why what we get is talk, talk, talk. I would really appreciate seeing an action plan of what you're going to do. I stood at the pole and watched the crew replace the, what do you call the box up there?
The transformer.
The transformer. I stood out there for almost 2 hours because I wanted to talk to them. It appears to me, and you know everything, I know nothing for sure. It appears to me that these transformers are critical in areas. Why don't you replace the transformers? We're talking about $50 million worth of equipment, but I see no change and no improvement. And I'm sure the people in Whitehaven, the people in Shelby Forest, and this other, what's the other neighborhood, feels the same way. So you can consider me representing those people. And most of those areas have a lot of old people that are on public assistance that don't have a voice. So consider me their voice. And I appreciate your letting me go off on you.
And let's let him kind of respond to that.
Yes,
Certain areas.
so let me circle back with you at the end of this meeting, get your address. We'll look specifically at your area. I can't tell you exactly what's wrong, why you were out at Area 18. I don't have that kind of granular knowledge. But we can certainly look it up if there's some specific things that are going on in any area. If you're having multiple outages, we need to know about that. We have a reliability department. That's what they do. They go out, they walk the lines, they look for areas where tree contact may be happening, and so they do that. So give us an opportunity to help you, okay? I want to help you.
Yeah, MLGW has always had capital improvement plans. This is their 5-year plan to go above and beyond, and they're even putting more into that as a result of some of the recent storms. So, but it does take time. So thank you for that. And Alonzo will get with you offline. Gentleman over here to my left.
Yeah, Richard Randall. One of the things I suggested earlier, and I thought it met with a good reception, was that the difficulty with the plan we have now, it mentions nothing about expanding the underground. And I think Alonzo referred to something along that line as we get those opportunities that really should be in that written document so that people actually know that there is along these main lines a plan coming in the future to get underground and away from these trees that fell across Walnut Grove, or you name the street, that wiped out power for, what, 11 days or whatever it was, something like that. But if you just leave it alone, it looks like you're not paying any attention.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, guys. Do we have a microphone back here? All right, thank you.
I do also want to say thank you for your getting together and forming this OIAT. My power was out for 10 days here in Landon and 3 days over the New Year's. I don't know why it was out then. And then I had a water outage too in the past couple of months that they had to do some repair work. So I appreciate the opportunity here and I appreciate all this information. What I'm concerned about is we really want to be a part of the follow-up to make sure things are being done. Not that we don't trust anyone or doubt that we know this is an enormous project, but even here where it says we will provide updates on our progress to the community on a routine basis, where will that be posted? Is that going to be on MLGW's website? Is it just going to be on a press release somewhere or in your little folder you get when you get your bill? I think everything needs to be in one location on MLGW's website. For those of us that are concerned citizens, will know that yes, they are following through on these ideas and these plans because it was a great committee, good topics came up, but when you've already got a 5-year plan that I apologize for saying this, I think you're behind on already. I was disturbed when I found out that we were behind 7 years on our tree trimming cycle. I was told that by the tree trimmers at one of the first meetings. So I do think that we need to be sure that we have a good follow-up that is expressed to us as the citizens and the ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take that to heart. We'll look at one centralized means of getting that out. We may use different channels as well.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, I think that's very important. One of the things that we've done consistently when we've had sessions like this, whether it was on this or power supply or any other issues, we had, and the team does a great job, they will post, if you go to the website, you will see that there is you can click on a section for something. You'll have an outage communications opportunity that you will be able to see. I didn't say it's there now, I'm saying you will. And it will be housed, under all of that will be housed all these presentations, these dashboard updates and all that stuff. So we will work to make sure that it'll be very easy. If you go to MLGW.com, you'll be able to see right there where you'll be able to find information regarding all of this information and updates on how our progress. And I definitely want to address, ma'am, your comments regarding your outages and certainly nobody wants it. We don't want anyone to ever be out, which is why we 24/7 have people working to get people back on, because we don't want anyone to have outages, and certainly we want to make sure we follow up. The thing that Brian just mentioned, I think, is really important. You heard Alonzo talk about the in-progress work that's going on with distribution automation. We already have rolled out, I don't know, 200 and some odd devices that's out there. So there are things going on, albeit not maybe as quickly as we'd like. We're having some tree trimming challenges that we've talked about in every one of these sessions, and some other things with slowing down the work. But I want to assure you that there are things happening to make things better. We cannot, sometimes it's a tsunami of events that occur that cause us to be challenged, but certainly don't want you to get the impression, or anyone to get the impression, that any areas are being ignored, because part of having a plan is also making sure that we're addressing it in a comprehensive way, those challenges that are out there for all of our customers. And so we understand the frustration. Those of us who are at MLGW experience outages also. I can raise my hand, had an outage last week personally. And so I tell you that to tell you that your input's very much appreciated, and we understand the challenge and the frustration. We're certainly going to be working as quickly as we can, and we'll get some specific information on your challenges so you can be up to date on what we're doing in your community. Thank you though for that.
All right, over here, yes ma'am.
Hi, I'm Linda Williams, and I represent Roselle Ansdale and Midtown area. And over the last 8 years, I have never had a power outage. No. But what my mom did to our house, she cut the trees that were along the lines. And I have trimmed trees, and I have urged my neighbors to trim their trees and things like that. But I'm standing here to plead with MLGW to do better PR work, to build trust with the community. When you guys come on and there's a bad storm and everything, people are calling me because I don't believe a word they say. They gonna take care of this stuff first, and we're gonna be the last one. And listen, I have called and called. I can't get through. You know, tons of calls. Our phones light up, don't they, Ola? Our phones light up. I see your lights are on. You got a hook up. The lights on. I had to turn my lights off. We have to build trust. Now we know in East Memphis, District 5, that's what you're talking about. Don't forget all them old trees that they won't cut. I'm telling you what the problem is. We gotta be honest with people and tell them what the problems are. And tell them an honest time that their lights will be back on. If you don't know, stand up and say, I don't know. I don't have the least idea. We got 10 crew, I don't know. I'm doing my best. Let's be honest with the people, open with them. And let's value the time of your advisors and the people who are your stakeholders and things like this. Because every time we make a meeting here, there are 5 other things. I'm saying 5. For some of us, there are more that we could be doing for our community. We do a food pantry every month, not just every once in a while, every month, and have been doing it before COVID. We give people diapers and Pampers, adult diapers. When I say diapers, that's what I'm talking about. We try to meet the needs of the community. That's why they have that trust in us. And they come to us when they can't reach you guys. So, this is not just for Roselle, this is for Glenview, this is for Orange Mound. Orange Mound has been neglected for so many decades. That's what the infrastructure and things like that. So we're talking about problems that happen over a long period of time that have come to fruition now. So let's build trust. I trust Beverly Perkins. And then she say, I believe it. You know what? You don't know what? She'll email me back. I'm working on it. I heard you. That's all you gotta do. Respond, you won't have to keep having these sessions. Sorry, thank you.
No, thank you, Ms. Williams, and actually thank you for your engagement on our advisory committee that you're on, that you serve on. You do a great job as an advocate, as you've demonstrated today. You do a great job advocating, and we appreciate that. And we really take to heart the comment around the importance of trust. That's actually part of our vision that we have, and I get it. When we don't perform, that certainly will erode trust. Part of the reason we're doing what we're doing now is to improve on that. But again, we certainly understand, and I respect the fact that there's that sentiment that maybe folks think. Well, I hope those of you who've been here for all 4 meetings, and in particular the first 2, if you remember what Alonzo went through, discussed the process that we use for restoration, I hope you remember that, and it's in your books. Because that can be helpful as you communicate with your constituents, your peers, and those that are in your communities, to make sure they understand how we do what we do. Because some of what is sometimes is apparent isn't necessarily the reality, and so it's important that all of you who are stakeholders take this information and help clarify maybe misunderstandings. And where we fall short, we definitely want to close the gap. But at the same time, we also want to make sure that we are conferring and educating folks on the process. And I hope you recall how we talked about the steps we take in restoration. And so anyway, hopefully, but again, very, very powerful. Thank you for that input. We certainly take your input to heart. Thank you.
And as we're waiting on any final comments, I will say, to Ms. Carson that, we monitor 60 utilities across the state. And I see MLGW doing a lot of engagement on social media and across all platforms. And if you ask 10 people what is the best way to do it, you're going to get a lot of different answers. And so, to the point, there are some elderly who do not go to a website, but yet they watch the TV. But then you go to a millennial, they don't even have local TV channels, they're watching YouTube. And so you have to manage that to try to meet everyone. And I certainly concur that, a centralized location, for a website is certainly, highly regarded. But, we will put out social media from the state association, and we'll put it on all the platforms of social media. And it's interesting that some will always engage you on Facebook, whereas another one will only engage you on Twitter. And so, it is a new world. It is a new world in how we communicate with people. And see, I've got my young lady over here nodding her head, and she has a very different perspective than maybe some others in the room. And so, we monitor that. And I know that JT, does the power hour and those things. And that is a opportunity, again, that they are trying to engage you in. And it's challenging. It's challenging. And certainly during the height of an outage, it's frustrating. Nobody wants to have their, power out. Or sometimes even when your power's on, you get engaged. But, any further comments? I think this has been really beneficial. Yes, sir. Sorry. We'll get you, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you for your voice. Thank you, Mr. Young. You mentioned ordinance, and I definitely want to assure everybody in this room that I will be working on the ordinance. I would like to team up with Memphis Light, Gas, and Water. I do represent the Memphis Tree Board as well as the Germantown Tree Board. I have reviewed every ordinance in the city, in the state of Tennessee, and I have found no ordinance that I'm aware of that is in regards to utilities. So I would need some help from Memphis Light, Gas, and Water and from the citizens that are in this room. You're all welcome to my email and to mail me your input as far as the ordinance would pertain to trees and vegetation and utilities. Thank you.
So regarding the ordinance, I don't know if you're aware, but our tree ordinances are under our planning and development and our zoning. So if you want to engage with them and provide some expertise, I'd be happy to get your information. But they are aware and they are looking at ways they can not only affect current residents, but how we can better guide new builds on how they implement vegetation. So I'll get your information and see what we can do.
Rita Anderson, Whitehaven. Two comments. And I told Mr. Young this at one time before, we realized the budget's coming up. And I told him before, I got tired of seeing him begging. So if there are people in this room that might be interested in working with, it got to be ridiculous how many times he had to go before the city council to get the budget done. And another thing too, in dealing with the TA, there's something is amiss. You know, I read very well and see the news about what's going on with TA and why it's such a hassle for Memphis like Water to determine what power source they're going to use. There's something not quite right here. The people in this room know that. So I don't know if some people in here would be interested in being a part of that and helping that. We need it to happen or either not happen. Thank you.
Okay, and certainly that's another open process I'll speak to briefly. MLGW will be taking comments from the public as you know, they make that decision on their power supply, and I would encourage everybody to make comments as well. Anything specific you want to say? I know it's
No, thank you, Mr. Anderson. One of the things that I'll just I agree with you. Thank you. I remember you now that you said that. You reminded me that I was begging, and I thought about that's probably the way it comes across. I'm down there begging. But thank you for that. And regarding the power supply, which as you know is out of scope from our team here, but I will just mention, most of you know we did have a presentation last week from our consultant on the bids, and now we're in a phase where there is some negotiation going on with a short list of bidders, but in the meantime, we're planning by August 17th to go to our board with a recommendation moving forward. But in the interim, and even after August 17th, there will be plenty of time for the public to have input. We've had a lot of public input. And so I think it's really important. The bids typically in any bid process, and I know Giselle can speak to this for her based on her former role, but once we do an intent to award, and certainly when we get to the August 17th date, we will, bids will be available. People can view them, see them. As you may know, some have already disclosed what they have bid, and that's up to them. But just be aware that that's kind of the outline. And I don't know if our board chair has any comments since he's here. I don't want to, put him under the impression. You got any thoughts or comments on? You're good? That mentions no, I don't want to say anything. Smart man.
I just want to follow up on that. You said you've already had a lot of input onto this. From the public, I'd like to know what all the input is from others in my community. Is there any way that I can find out?
So, sure.
I think that should be public because that may change my, and
Sure.
it has an effect on that. So I would really like to see all this.
Sure, I would encourage you to go to MLGW.com, click on Power Supply Alternatives. You will find a bevy of data and information from going all the way back to the Integrated Resource Plan that we did, and the Power Supply Advisory Team that was a publicly set up group of stakeholders that provided us input 2 years ago throughout the IRP process. So you'll find all of that information available if you just go to our website and click on our power supply.
Just to follow up. So if we go to that, the power supply, the webpage on MLGW that you just listed, that'll also have all the list of all the bidders?
No, the bidders are not public yet. And this is again in keeping with the process. There's state law that we're following the process. Because what we don't want to do is have this process disrupted and have to start all over again. So it's our goal to follow the process that's been laid out, that is legal, that is appropriate, and that is in line with the resolution that both our board and the council approved last March. So the bidders that bid on this will be available. You'll be able to see those. Again, August 17th is our target date to present to the board a recommendation. That will not be a decision date. That's just a date when we will present a recommendation. But you'll be able to see, anyone who wants to, will be able to see who's bid, what they did, etc. At that time.
And
we'll be able to see it at this, what you just mentioned?
I can't tell you exactly where those bidders will be. It probably will be there, but I'll leave that to Gail and team, but we'll make sure it's available. We know this is a big deal. We don't. So let me just make this real quick comment. It would be unwise for us, knowing that bids become public, to not be honest and forthright about what the bids. So that wouldn't be real smart on our part. So I say that to say that the process is that bids become public at some point prior to a final decision, and we know that. And so we have no reason to. We're just trying to make sure we do what we're supposed to do, so we don't. This process doesn't get blown up. It is more than likely that we'll may even put a special. I'm speaking for Gail's team now, but we may even put a special place on there for the power supply bids to be, where they can be posted. So stay tuned, but again, August 17th is the target date around that.
And you can see on the screen here behind you the power supply is there demonstrating, as well as, of course, the reminder that today we got an Outage Improvement Advisory, and it's the latest news.
Yeah, there's the website. Okay. So all the information you want. And actually, there's if you notice that there was an icon that said all bid forms, that's information that was available to bidders as they were, that's got the qualifications, what was required, and all of that. It doesn't have the bidders' names and all their bids, but that's just so you know what was presented to the bidders. That is public.
So I understand that MLGW, if following along with, there's a law prohibiting you from disclosing the bidders, but I also understand that one of the bidders did go public yesterday. Is that the kind of thing that you would encourage the other bidders to go ahead and do if the rest of the public would like to be informed, even though you can't do it by law?
I have no advice for the bidders in terms of what they do public. I have no comment on that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Zeroing back in on a point of concern. The communication between SCADA and CARES. I am a retiree of Light, Gas, and Water, and I know that that has been an issue for a long time. I started in electrical operations, so there was talk about those two systems communicating. So I'm sure you can understand my concern that here we are 20 plus years later and it's still an issue. So I'm like, how are we going to specifically address that? Because those two systems need to communicate in order for Light, Gas, and Water to be able to give accurate information to the ratepayers. So that's a big issue. And I'm like, can we get a timeline on when that will be addressed, since it has been an issue for so very long?
What we'll do, rather than me commit to a timeline here in this particular meeting, we will post, when we do our posting of this meeting, we'll put a timeline out then. I would tell you this though, that it has improved the communication between SCADA and CARES. We've had upgrades to the SCADA system, we have upgrades to the CARES system, we've implemented a smart meter system, and all those things got to talk to each other, along with the customer system. So there are 4 systems that are involved here. So we've improved it. It's not where we want it to be. We want to get it better, and we are committed to doing that. Now I can give you a timeline on that, but I can't give you a timeline at this point. But I do commit to presenting a timeline within the next 3 months on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I see one more question over here, I think.
Yes, Sharon Trower, I represent Seattle Park Neighborhood Association, and I just have a comment, not a question. My husband and I have said several times that we would rather have a customer cost increase than have to replace the food in the freezer and refrigerator.
Thanks for that. I take that to heart.
All right. Oh, we do have one more? 2 more? A couple more on this side over here?
Yes. I'd like to know, it was one lady in particular on TV, an elderly lady, that lived in her home for a very long time, and the trees or whatever pulled her line down. And she was begging for help to put it back on her house because you would not reconnect her. And I would like to know what is in place that can help her, get her electrical stuff back up. I know you all just reconnect the electricity to the house, but she didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what to do either. I didn't even know what she did. I just heard it on TV. And I'm like, well, somebody should know something, and since Mr. Lygass had been there, they should have had a pamphlet, something to hand to her. You need to call these people in there, whatever.
So that is a very real issue, that there's not an organized assistance program available for us at this point. We actually explored trying to put something together, and there's so many limitations on how a public utility can use its ratepayer funds that we really weren't able to do that. I believe there is reimbursement available through FEMA in some situations, but what we would ask folks to do is reach out to us. We are well connected with all of the government and nonprofit and faith-based organizations in the community that offer assistance, and we will do our absolute best to try to connect people with the resources that are available. But so when the storm took down the service connection to a home, we can't reconnect power until that's restored and signed off on by an electrician. And that costs some money to do, and it is a very real challenge for some customers. I recognize that. While we can't make direct financial assistance available, we can certainly help people network into those resources that are available.
And I think one other thing there is, MLGW isn't, they can't recommend, hey, you go use Joe's electrician over here, because then Tom's going to sue MLGW for saying the public tell everybody to go to Joe, and Tom's just as good as he is. So that really creates that challenge. I understand that, and that's a widespread problem, as you have that line of demarcation between the homeowner's responsibility and MLGW's responsibility. Yes, ma'am. You have another comment over here?
I just want to amen what you were saying. Okay.
I like your amen every now and then. Thank you.
But to piggyback on what you were saying, we got a lot of those calls from the community. And they call electrician and everything. But as a neighborhood association, it is important for us to give information to our residents in our community and let them know that there are limits to what MLGW, and that they need an emergency fund for these things that are called emergencies. Okay. And I'm going to say that really carefully, because people in Memphis want you to do everything for them. And the more you do, the more they look at you. I'm in church now, so I'm going to tell the truth, okay? We need to work on survival skills. The power went out in February. In the wintertime, put your food in a cooler on the porch. Baby, I'm talking about for real. I'm talking about realistic. I'm talking about surviving. Of course it does. Because you got a lot of things. But
Now let's go.
reality, survival skills, like boiling water, things like that on your gas stove, things like that when electricity go out. There are things to do that we used to know how to do a long time ago. So I do workshops on healthy living and survival, and I'll post those to let y'all know how to do in case of emergency. So you guys can come to my workshop and be educated.
All right, well, thank you. Hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Ms. Williams, I greatly appreciate you. A few years ago, we did create the Neighborhood Advisory Committee. On that committee are presidents of neighborhood organizations or their designees. And at those meetings,
we present all kinds of information. So Ms. Williams is equipped, and other presidents are equipped to communicate with their neighbors. They are the leaders in their community. The people trust them. So we started this group to rely on them, to provide them with information, and also when they submit to us information that they want us to cover at the meeting, we make sure those issues are covered. So Ms. Williams, I want to thank you. All other presidents here are representatives of neighborhood organizations who care about your community, who come to these meetings to learn as much as you can about what's going on at MLGW. They are the face of some of our communications. Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Just a comment back there.
But I mean, as far as the food thing, that's not something MLGW can control.
Yeah.
It's not MLGW's responsibility, but I think you were the one that mentioned it at one of the meetings I attended previously about, well, I don't know why people were complaining about their food in the refrigerator, because they go to it was cold as dickens outside, they could put the food outside. So I was one of those people, and I researched on the internet about putting your food in a cooler and leaving it outside, and I called the health department to find out what is the safety. Nowhere is it recommended to do that. You have to have a thermometer and monitor the temperature. You put a cooler outside, the outside air temperature gets warmer. There are all kinds of liability issues with that. For someone to say that without knowing all the facts, it's a reckless statement and endangers someone's life.
We're here talking about MLGW and outage improvement. MLGW is not the health department, nor telling you a certain temperature to store inside or outside.
So with that, again, I do think that I want to thank you all again for this, and Brian, you in particular, for facilitating this. This feedback has been candid, and we appreciate that. I want to take a couple of minutes just to specifically thank some people, in addition to those of you who are here, who have participated from the community as stakeholders to provide input. I will say it this way. We say this to our employees all the time. We always want feedback and we want the input. And it's important for people to share that. One of the challenges we had that Brian alluded to a minute ago is that sometimes, you'll get feedback that you simply cannot implement because it's sometimes just, they're not congruent or they're misaligned. And so don't want anyone to think that some of the input that you provided, if you don't see it being implemented, that it means we didn't hear you. It doesn't mean that. And I want to make sure everyone understands that we are listening. We have gathered that information. We've got to make sure that it's plausible, feasible, and safe to implement, and we will do those things in the time frame that we're trying to push forward to. We've got a lot of work left to do. We're going to continue to keep you all updated, and there is a possibility that we may need to pull a few of you in the future for some more specific input, and if that's the need, we'll certainly let you know. So I want to just make sure everybody is aware of that. I want to again thank our board chair, Mitch Graves, for being a part of this team and being engaged. It does demonstrate from a leadership perspective the importance of this particular issue. Certainly want to thank Mayor Strickland and the city of Memphis, represented now today by Tiffany, and for helping us get together. Doug's here, but I want to thank him in his absence for what he's done. Certainly want to thank Alonzo Weaver, who is our Chief Operating Officer, for his engagement and his team, many of whom are here and are represented. Brad Gates is here, who runs all of our crews and he manages all of our field work area where we get work done. And I mentioned Don Roberts earlier, who is here, who also is engaged in system reliability. Jim West, who you've heard from a few times, Service Vice President, and Martrice Anderson is here, who directs that group. Their engagement I really appreciate. You've heard many times from Gail Carson. Her team is, again, all over the place. I mean, they're all over the place running this, pulling this together, the books you have and the coordination of all this. So thank you, Gail and team. And then Dana Jeans, who's our Senior Vice President, Chief Administrative Officer, and CFO, who actually has responsibility on the dollars side of pulling all this together. So he's listening very quietly because he's also engaged in making sure this happens from a dollar standpoint. So to each of you, thank you. Know that you're being heard. And I know your time is valuable, and we don't take that lightly. And so we want to just let you know how much we appreciate being engaged. So stay in tune, stay connected, download my account if you haven't already. Please be sure to go online to MLGW.com and make sure you follow along with the implementation of these things that we've talked about and any updates over the next 2 to 4 months that will be demonstrated there that you'll see and some timelines. So again, thank you for your participation. Everyone have a blessed day. Stay cool, best you can. We're going to try to keep the lights on for you. All right, God bless you.